packet pushers.
Welcome to the IPv6 Buzz, where we dare to dive into the 128-bit address space wormhole. I'm Ed Horley.
And I'm Scott Hogue. On the show, we discuss all things IPv6, strategy, design, deployment, and operations.
And I'm Tom Coffeen. We've spent 20 plus years working with the IPv6 protocol. We run a consulting firm where we get IPv6 working for our customers.
And we're here to share some lessons learned and how to avoid common mistakes. We're glad you joined us. Today, we're just going to do a quick end-of-year wrap-up show and get a chance to chat about a few things that we saw going on in 2024 and maybe some future projections for 2025. So I guess, guys, what were the major things of note around IPv6 that we saw in 2024 that we think were something we should highlight or talk through?
Hey, new documentation prefix.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, and a long time coming, and good news for us because it's greater than a /32. So there's a lot more space to be able to build example topologies and configurations and samples.
Yeah, especially like multi-AS, multi-autonomous systems. Kind of hard to do that before, even if you sort of pick on a /32 as this, which I think is probably maybe scaled a little smaller than what service providers are probably getting today. But yeah, if you want to be able to model that, it's nice to have the additional space to have that /20 available now. Of course, because it doesn't fall perfectly on that 4 nibble boundary, you have to be really careful when you start using it for examples. At least that one bit me in the butt right away. Make sure you peel off that extra 5th hexadecimal prefix character. Otherwise, you're not dealing with the right alignment for the right CIDR length.
Yeah, that's a little gotcha.
Yeah.
But yeah, the new documentation prefix is certainly a welcome addition for 2024, and I think will serve us well, hopefully, for a couple of years here. What else? I saw in the news that there was a new /12 that was allocated to APNIC. So that means, out of the IANA global pool, more address space was released for APNIC to go ahead and hand out. So they had an existing, 2400 : /12, and they've got a new allocation 2410 : /12. And theirs is contiguous. So technically you can roll it up as a 2400 : /11. So they can list it as a single prefix. So it looks like the speed of allocating V6 addresses, at least for APNIC, has picked up, and they needed additional address space to assign out. This still isn't anywhere close to the total allocation of global Unicast addresses possible. I mean, this is a pretty small fraction.
We're not going to run out?
In 2025, probably not.
Yeah, I don't foresee that as a particular issue, but it is of note if you are doing filter lists based off of IANA lists that you might want to go update that because you're going to see new allocations coming out from APNIC here shortly.
Yeah, the way that we've sort of been measuring that /48 consumption within the rears, so if you go to stats.ipv6enable.net to kind of show you how much of the existing global Unicast allocation is being consumed, it's not going to incorporate those /12s that have been allocated but not yet assigned because they haven't really been handed out as /48s yet. So, or multiples of /48s as the case will be.
Yeah, good point. Was there anything else that was sort of interesting or something that we wanted to highlight?
A lot of work on RFC 6724 this year.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with that because, it seems like there's a lot of struggle about what was actually introduced with the changes that they want to do for 6724 and trying to address ULA. And then several other things got brought up along the process that were like, hey, this might impact this. And so it seems like there's a bit of a
little friction there.
Well, some sort of crazy rubric of dependency.
Yeah.
That's happening that I don't know if anyone can untangle what's going on there, but with any luck, maybe we'll have Nick back on to try and give us updates about what's happening in 2025 with that to hopefully get it across the finish line because I think they're on like the 10th or 11th edit.
Oh, goodness. I haven't checked the betting markets lately to see what they think about RFC 6724's chances in 2025.
I think that's going to be a challenge either way, just to try and get all the documents, RFCs updated based off of those changes. And then to try and get all the software manufacturers to actually implement those changes is going to be a challenge in and of itself, right? So I think that it's going to take a long time for that to propagate and get out there in a useful fashion. So
yep, fair enough.
Yeah, I wrote that article this year about, well, what if you were to add a new, even just an extension header? How long would it take between you came up with the idea, you got it passed through the IETF, then it had to be implemented in host operating systems, middle boxes, not blocked by all the filters, and finally becomes useful? It's a long period. Could be 5 years. So yeah, it takes a while to change all of that.
Yeah, I can't imagine that it's going to be a quick change, even if it pushes through. And the only reason I can say that is because the previous RC before 6724 was it 3484 is still out there.
Still out there, still causing problems.
Yeah. So, quite clearly, we're going to be living with this transition period for a long time. But yeah, I think that's of note. It's something people should be following in 2025, I guess. Maybe that's more of the comment for the audience is keep an eye on that one because hopefully there'll be some activity. They might get it across the finish line.
You're just about to be able to use ULA again.
Yeah.
No.
Any day now.
For sure. Was there anything else noteworthy here that we wanted to bring up?
A recent thing people have talked about on the internet is recent No NAT November. People who took their home networks and made them run IPv6 only and not do any IPv4 NAT. And they would observe for an entire month what life would be like and see what applications they used broke or had IPv4 dependencies that they couldn't work around and things like that. So there were articles and people have kind of written summaries of what that month was like for them.
It's almost like the reverse of what we did for the launch day. So
Yeah.
I guess it's the other slice of bread on the other side of the sandwich to figure that out. But it's very cool that folks are doing that. I think that's awesome.
Yeah. Instead of a V6 only day or a V6 only week, because Latin America had IPv6 launch week, or
Right.
IPv6 launch, try it for a whole month.
And then I guess one of the things I probably of note was just, at least mentally for myself, was that 2024 seemed to be a lot of movement about IPv6 only from different countries. It seemed to be an accelerated set of criteria and requirement across many more countries than just the US with their mandate. And it seemed like Germany had done stuff and China had done stuff and India had done stuff and several others. Czech Republic, right? I think put something in play. So it seems like there's a lot of countries that are realizing that V6 is really the only way from a technology protocol standpoint to sort of move things forward to give them the sort of growth requirements that they need for their countries overall from a big picture strategy basis. And so they're starting to implement just more, I wouldn't say regulations, but guidelines and mandates and requirements to get both their commercial and government organizations to move towards IPv6.
Yeah.
I think we'll continue to see that happen in 2025, 2026, as more and more of that changes.
The only way to divest yourself of the burden of the legacy IP protocol is to turn it off.
Right. And to put plans in place to have V6 available and operational and tested and do all those things. And they're trying to put the framework in place to tell everyone you need to start doing this work. So I think that was a big change that I saw.
Yeah, if you're going to do testing of IPv6, you should test what it's going to be like in not just in the dual stack phase, but in the V6 only phase. If you're going to do the testing, do all the testing and see where you're going to ultimately be headed in the end.
Yeah.
Good advice.
Well, I guess the other thing just to mention as the end of your wrap up was our IPv6 basic series was super popular. That's the feedback we got from the packet pusher side, at least on the stats page. You folks seem to really like us covering a bunch of the basic stuff. So we will continue to do so. There'll be more topics that fit under the IPv6 sort of basics category. And if you have specific requests around things that you want to see us cover, just let us know in the packetpushers.net/FU, and that FU stands for follow up. And we'll be happy to try and make sure that we've got it on the list and something that we will continue to cover in the podcast.
We reserve the right to not cover mobile IPv6, however.
Hey, there's a whole chapter in our book on that. No one read it.
I got Joe Davies to move that out of the third edition of Understanding IPv6 into the appendix as a standard chapter because it was just not needed.
I spent all that time with Wireshark looking at the mobility header and Type 2 routing header for naught.
Your home region and reachability. Yeah. Yeah.
The hottie and the cotty and
yeah.
The home testing it and care of testing it. Oh my gosh. Had a flashback there.
Yeah, and trying to find any code that actually supported that worked well was a whole different challenge too. So yeah.
We're showing our graybeards here.
Yes, totally. I guess let's wrap it up and talk about what we think 2025 is going to hold in terms of major events that might happen with IPv6 or things that we think the audience should really keep an eye out. We already mentioned one, which was, hey, you're going to see the new allocation coming out from APNIC, update your stuff, and definitely make use of the documentation prefix going forward, the new one. What else do we think folks should be paying attention to?
think we'll continue to see IPv6 usage increase. I saw statistics yesterday. I was looking at the W3 Tech's statistic on websites that run IPv6, and 55% of the top 1,000 websites use IPv6 now, and 53% of the top 10,000 websites use IPv6. So more popular websites are using IPv6. And so that's crossed that threshold of 50%. So you're seeing that usage, and we can only expect that to increase.
Yeah, here. So I'll second that.
Besides the increase portion, which I think is accurate, is there any sort of tipping point or major threshold that we think is going to be of note?
Yeah.
I don't think it's just, I mean, probably for most of the audience, it's going to be in North America. It feels like North America is hovering at the 50% threshold. It's either, depending on which global stats you look at, you're either above it or below it, right? I think 2025 will be distinctly above it, right? In terms of all the stats that at least I'm looking at from Akamai, from Google, from Six Labs, from Cisco, will all put basically North America, Mexico, Canada, US, probably above 50% for user traffic, for service provider traffic, sort of across the board, right? Seems like it'll finally happen. Only taken us 25 years, right, to cross the threshold, but it seems like that will be a thing.
Yeah, we see, if you look at, Google's IPv6 statistics on a worldwide basis, growing at about 5% a year, and they're close to the 45% today, then next year we could expect it getting to 50% globally, which is reaching that tipping point of then the world having, at least from Google's perspective, more IPv6 and less IPv4. So we're, in some countries, far more IPv6 usage than the United States, India, many other countries. They're past that tipping point where V4 is in the minority, their traffic.
Yeah, at least it will not be an ignorable thing, right? Because you can say the majority of internet traffic will be IPv6 at that point across all statistics, end user, service provider, its path, like all the major stats that seem to be significant, at least in terms of measuring the performance capabilities for any given country, right? So I don't know if the prefixes will be, but transit AS for sure, like the content's already probably above that. User is probably the one that most people see or pay attention to, versus like the total overall deployment. So I think both Akamai and Google are, I think Google's primarily looking at user, right? And then Akamai is sort of looking at transport because of their CDN side, right? And what they're actually providing from a content basis. I don't know.
You're right, Ed. You have to look at both sides. You have to look at the IPv6 enabled eyeballs connected to the internet, and then the content that is available over IPv6. We still see many popular websites not using IPv6 yet. And I think they will probably next year. They may start to realize, oh, yeah, we should V6 enable our website. And that is not difficult to do. And there's benefits for end user experience, performance that they derive from that. And end users will continue to increase in number of their V6. But yeah, some countries, India, Malaysia, and then European countries, France, Belgium, Germany, have a lot of IPv6. They've crossed that tipping point already. Saudi Arabia, Vietnam, Uruguay, Taiwan, Greece, they're also past that tipping point even today. And then the United States is next on that list. And a lot of countries are near or past that 50% mark.
Yeah, I think that's a major thing that probably 2025, and we might see majority countries at least, move that direction potentially in 2026, 2027. So it's something to keep an eye on. I think that's the interesting stuff. And there's lots of other technical details and interesting things going on, but we'll cover those in other shows. It's not to give away too much.
Also in 2025, I think we can also expect some changes to host operating systems. Host operating systems vary in their use of a CLAT or in terms of their use of DHCP v6. So we're going to see, hopefully, fingers crossed, Microsoft CLAT next year, hopefully.
Yeah, that'll be a big win for a lot of folks, unbeknownst to them, I imagine. Probably be a magical behind the scenes sort of thing. But yeah, I agree. Well, with that, I guess we'll just say thanks so much for listening, everyone. We really appreciate it. It's been quite a few years for the show, and you'll definitely be continuing on, but we just wanted to make sure we said thank you very much for listening and participating. And please do send us follow-up notes and other comments. We do read and take to heart everything that you folks send in. And if we get enough of them bundled together, especially if they're technical questions, we'll try and do a listener show and answer all of them best we can. We do those occasionally here and there.
Yeah, thanks, everyone.
Yeah, thanks, everyone, and blessings for a Happy New Year.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of IPv6 Buzz. If you've got feedback or a follow-up on this topic, send us a message at packetpushers.net/FU. We'd love to hear from you and continue the conversation.
Also, on packetpushers.net, you'll find a range of deep dive technical podcasts for IT pros, including heavy networking, heavy wireless, and day 2 cloud.
There's a whole lot more on the Packet Pusher site as well, such as tutorial videos and a networking job board to help you find or fill your next great role. So whether you're deep in your career or just starting up, Packet Pushers is the place to go to grow both your skills and your personal network.
So long and until next time, we'll see you on the IPv6 internet.